Hi everyone, welcome to Coco Zenith DIY channel. My name is Bike. Today's tutorial is going to be on this beautiful dress shirt, which is very versatile. So you can wear it as a dress shirt and you can also wear it as a vest on a pant like I have right here. So I divided this video into two. Part one, which is this one, is going to be on drafting and cutting. Then part two is going to be on sewing the dress shirt itself. If you're new to this channel, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you can get updates of new tutorials from me. And if you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much. Don't forget to hit the notification to get alerts when I have new videos uploaded. To get started, here is what you need. I used 2.5 to 3 yards for this, and this is by 45 inches wide. It all depends on the length of your dress. So I've opened up the fabric, and that is the top of the fabric. That is the bottom of the fabric right there. Then what I did after that is I just folded a little part of the fabric, and here is how you can determine how much you want to fold over. So what I did is I used the biggest part of my body, which is my hips, divided by 4, and I added 5 inches to it. So my hips is 42, divided by 4 is 10.5. So here is mine. I added 10.5, which is right there. Then I added 5 more inches to it, just to give me enough space to draft my bodice. You can add 6 or 7 inches to yours if you feel comfortable doing that. So I'm just trying to save a little fabric here. So when I got done, here is what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw a line at the top of the fabric. So I'm going to draw a straight line like that. I'm sorry, my marker is not too, I only have a white marker, so I couldn't get a colored marker for this project. So please bear with me. It's not going to be too visible because of the white marker. So once you're done drawing that line is going to be our shoulder line. Okay? Then another thing I did is I'm going to measure 2 inches starting from the folded area of the fabric. So that is 2 inches. I'm going to mark it. Then I'm going to use a ruler to draw a line on that 2 inches all the way down. Like so. So once I'm done drawing that line, I'm going to fold that line in like that, right at the line. So if you have an iron, you can use it to press down that line so it stays and not shifting. So once you're done folding the 2 inches, you're going to draw a 1 inch in the middle. So you're just going to divide it by 2, which is 1 inch. You're going to draw a line, a 1 inch line, all the way down on that folded 2 inches. So every measurement that we're going to do is going to start from that line. So from that shoulder line up there, I'm going to start measure from my shoulder to my waist. My shoulder to waist is 16. So I'm going to put a mark on that 16 inches line. Like that. I hope you can see the line. I'm sorry for the color of the marker. Then I'm also going to measure my shoulder to hip. My shoulder to hip is 24, so I'm just going to mark mine right there. Okay, then also I'm going to measure my shoulder to how long I want my dress to be. I want my dress to be 40 inches long. So I'm going to mark the 40 inches right there. But I also want to add 1.5 inch for the seam allowance and also and the hem. So now it's going to be 41.5. But here is the deal right here. Pay close attention here. Because it's a shirt, I'm going to take 1 inch from the front, then I'm going to add the 1 inch to the back. So which means I'm going to take away 1 inch from the 41.5 inches that I have. So now I'm going to have 40.5 inches. I'm going to show you how to add the 1 inch to the back later in the tutorial. But right now, I'm taking 1 inch from it, and now I have 40.5 instead of 41.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark it right there. So that is the line that I'm going to use. The 40.5 inches line is what I'm going to use. So I'm going to get my ruler, then I'm going to square it out by drawing a long line across like that. Okay, then we're going to move to my hip line. So on that mark that I marked for my hips, I'm going to draw a line across like I did on the hem line. And all the lines, like I said, is going to start from that middle line on the fold over there at the edge. So I'm done with my hip line. I'm going to go to my waist line. Okay, then I'm going to draw a line across, starting from the line at the edge over there. So here is what we have so far. Now we're going to move to the shoulder line. Starting from that line, the 1 inch line right there. I'm going to move it closer so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. So that 1 inch line right there, we're going to start our measurement from there. And we're going to measure from our shoulder to shoulder divided by 2. My shoulder to shoulder divided by 2 is 7.5. My shoulder to shoulder is 15 inches. Divided by 2 is 7.5. So I'm going to mark down 7.5 inches on that shoulder line. Like that. Okay? So on that shoulder line, I'm going to mark down 1.5 inches. Right there. I know it's not that clear, but just bear with me. So grab your ruler, then you're going to connect starting from that line, that 1 inch line right there in the middle. So that's where we're going to start from. So we're going to use your ruler to connect starting from that angle right there all the way down through that 1.5 inch line. Then on that shoulder line, what we're going to do next is that we are going to measure our armhole divided by 2. That is going to be our armhole line. So your armhole, the circumference of your armhole divided by 2 is going to be your armhole line. So right on that line, I'm going to measure mine. Mine is 18 divided by 2 is 9. So I'm measuring 9 right there, starting from the slope line right there. It's not that clear, but I'm going to use a ruler to just join it. Okay, so I'm just going to put that mark right there, so to rule a line so it's more easier for you to see. Now we're going to draw a line on that 9 inches mark, that armhole mark that we mark, starting from the line at the corner, and that is going to be our bust line. So we're going to use a bust measurement on there. So now starting from that middle line, we're going to measure our bust divided by 4. So my bust is 40, divided by 4 is 10. So I'm going to mark down my 10 right there. So I'm going to add half inch ease, okay? Then I'm going to add 1 inch seam allowance. So you can put as much ease that you want, but I'm just adding half inch ease to mine. So I'm going to add 1 inch seam allowance. We're going to come down to the waistline. So we're going to get our waist measurement divided by 4. Then we are going to start. Mine is 35 divided by 4 is 875. So we're going to start from that line right there. And we're going to put our waist measurement divided by 4 in there. Mine is 35 divided by 4 is 8.75 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark it down with my marker right there. Then I'm going to add half an inch for the ease, which is 9.25. Then I'm going to add 1 inch seam allowance. That would be 10.25. So that is the waist. And when we're done with the waist, we're now going to move to the hips. So get your hips measurement divided by 4. Starting from that line, we're going to measure it. My hips is 42. Divided by 4 is 10 and a half. So I'm going to measure 10 and a half on that waist line. On the hips line. Then I'm going to mark it right there. Then I'm going to add a half an inch ease. Then I'm going to add 1 inch seam allowance. There you go. So it's 10.5 plus half an inch is 11 plus 1 inch seam allowance 12. That is for my measurement. So we're going to transfer the same measurement from the hip to the hemline. So starting from that line again, we're going to measure 10.5, which is my hip measurement divided by 4. I'm going to mark it right down there. Then I'm going to add half an inch ease, then 1 inch seam allowance, making 12, just like I have on my hips. So that is it. So you can just square it out and join the hips and the hemline. But I want a little bit of side curve on mine. So here is what I'm going to do. Whatever measurement you have right there, divide it by 2. So my whole measurement there is 12 inches. I'm dividing it by 2, making 6. So I already marked the 6 inches right there. So on that side seam, I'm going to measure 3 inches up from the hemline. Then I'm going to use my curve ruler to join it, starting from that mark to that 3 inches mark, like that. And if you don't want a curve at your side, it is okay. But if you want a curve like mine, you can just go ahead and do that. Now let's start connecting those lines. So from that line, we're going to join it to our hip line, like that. Then we're going to use our curve ruler to join the hip to the waist, like that. So joining the hips to the waist like that. Then you're also going to join the waist to the bust. I'm sorry that this part of the video was not recorded. My camera usually shut down after 20 minutes of recording and it doesn't give me notification when it's about to shut down. So I'm so sorry that this part was not in the video. It stopped recording while I was still doing the tutorial and I didn't notice that it has stopped recording. So here is what I did on the fabric. So that is the center front of the fabric and that is the shoulder line of the fabric. So that point right there is the shoulder to shoulder divided by 2. And that point right there is that 1.5 inches shoulder slope. So I have marked 1.5 inches on the slope. So from there to there is your armhole divided by 2. Mine is 18 inches divided by 2 is 9. So to cut out the armhole line, I will divide it by 2. So 9 divided by 2 is right there, which is 4.5. So that is right there. So on that point, I'm going to measure 3/4 right there. So that is going to be the front armhole. Then I'm going to trace it, stopping right there. Then right down there, I always measure 1 inch in that corner, just to help me with my armhole curve. Okay, so it helps a lot. So when I go from the top, I go through that 3/4 inch, then I'll go all the way on top of that 1 inch right there, then join the bust line. So that is the front part. So for the back, you're just going to start from that middle line right there and just trace it all the way down to the bust line. So that is for the back, right? So that is it. Then remember, before you cut it out, to put a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm sorry, I'm using one hand to hold the camera and one hand to draw, so my lines are not straight. So that's a 1/2 inch seam allowance before you cut it out. Just remember that. So for the front, for the neck, I measured 3 inches down and also 3.5 inches right there. Okay, then I went ahead and I connected it like that. And just remember to to draw out your seam allowance before you cut it out. So when you're cutting it out, you start from there, then you cut out all the way on top of the seam allowance. Then make sure you cut the back. Do not cut the front yet. So just cut it from the back. Okay? Like that. And that's it. So I am so sorry for this. So let's continue the video. I have cut out the front bodies and I have folded the back using my hip measurement divided by 4 plus 5 inches like I did when I was folding the front bodies. But to align the front bodies to the back bodies, we have to make sure that middle line that we have in the front bodies is aligned to the back. So that line right there, that middle line right there, is supposed to be aligned to the back. Okay, so that is how we are going to align the front bodies to the back bodies before we continue the video. I'm just making sure that is well aligned to that back bodies line. Okay, before we get started, I'm just going to show you some stuff that we have to do. So here is the front bodies. I have placed it on the back and the back is folded. Okay, so right now we're going to trace out that shoulder of the front bodies like that onto the back bodies like that. I'm sorry, my marker is not pretty clear. So I have just traced out that shoulder line all the way like I just did right now. So now we're going to add 2 inches to that line. So I'm just using my tape rule to just mark 2 inches on the line that I just traced out. If you have any question, please leave it down below. So I'm going to use my ruler to trace out that 2 inches that I just marked. So here is what it looks like. So I'm just going to join the shoulder, starting from that 2 inches line up there to the front shoulder, like that. So I'm just aligning and extending the shoulder. Then you can just go ahead and cut out that excess fabric. Also go ahead and cut out the armhole, making sure you're cutting the back armhole line, not the front but the back armhole line. Okay, if you like, you can go ahead and cut it all the way down, but before I continue my cutting, I'm going to go back up to the front, to the top part of the back bodice. Okay, so what I'm doing right now, that is the 2 inches line. So within the 2 inches line, I'm going to mark out 1 inch, which means I'm just going to divide it into 2. So I'm going to mark out 1 inch. Then I'm going to trace that line out. So that 1 inch right there is the 1 inch that we took out from the front bodice. If you remember that we took out 1 inch when we're measuring the front bodice. So that's 1 inch that we're going to add right now is going to replace the 1 inch that we took out from the front bodice. I hope you understand that. So I'm going to go ahead and extend the neck of the front bodice all the way to the back. Right there, all the way up. See, like that. So on that 1 inch line, I'm going to just curve it to make it the back neck. Then I'm going to cut it all out. You see the curve right there? So that's the curve for the back neck. Remember, it's on that 1 inch excess. Then you can now go ahead and cut out the back bodice. I am done cutting it right here. So that is the back bodice. I'm going to fold that away. And here is the front bodice. But before we finish, we have to remember to cut out the armhole of the back of the front bodice. Now remember that we still have the front bodice has a button in it. So we have to cut open the front bodice because when we're doing the drafting, it was on fold. So we have to remember to cut it open. Now we have to cut the sleeves. For the sleeves, I have folded it into 2, like that. Then I'm going to go ahead and just rule out a line right there. I'm sorry the lines are not very straight, very bright for you to show properly. Then I'm going to measure, starting from that line is going to be my shoulder line. So I'm going to measure how long I want the sleeves to be. So I want my sleeve to be 16 inches long. So I'm going to add 1 inch of hem and half an inch of seam allowance for the top part. So 1.5 is when I'm going to add to it. So which means I'm going to rule a line at 17.5, which means 16 inches long plus 1.5 extra hem and seam allowance, making 17.5. So that is how long I want my sleeves to be. So right there, I'm going to measure 2 inches. I'm going to measure 2 inches out. So you can either do 1 inch or 2 inches, all depends on your preference. So I just mark it down. The mark is not too visible. So now I'm going to measure my armhole divided by 2, which is 9. So because I want my sleeves to have a little bit of gathers, that is why I'm measuring 9. If you don't want gathers in yours, so you can minus 1.5 from that, measurement that you have or 2. So mine is 9 inches. If I don't want gathers on my sleeve, I would have just taken 1.5 half of it. It will be 7.5 that I will measure. So the whatever measurement you have divided by 2, mine is 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. So I'm going to make a mark in the middle like that. I'm sorry, the lines are just too faint. So I am going to draw a line in the middle like that. This is the best way that I can explain how to draft a sleeve. Okay. Okay. So right from that 2 inches mark that I marked, I'm going to draw a line to, to connect with that 9 inches line. So, but on that line in inches line, I'm going to measure my bicep. So the measurement of my own bicep is 15. So 15 divided by 2 is 7.5. Okay, so I'm going to put 7.5 on that sleeves. So 7.5 plus 1 inch seam allowance is going to be 8.5. So what I have right there now is 8.5. So now from that 2 inches mark, I'm going to use a ruler to draw a straight line to connect to that mark like that. So right in the middle, right there in the middle of the first part of that of the box, I'm going to measure 3/4. Then I'm going to mark it. So right in the middle of the lower part, I'm just going to measure 1/2 inch and I'll mark it. And this is not showing properly. I'm very, very sorry. So I'll use my curve ruler to just connect, starting from that 2 inches up, going through that 3/4 mark that I mark, see, like this, and it's going to stop in that middle line. Then I'm going to do the same thing, starting from that middle line. I'm going to connect through that 1/2 inch mark that I mark up to the armhole line. So it's going to be like this. I'm sorry that those lines are not showing properly. If you have any question, please leave it down below. So now I need to measure the circumference of how long I want my sleeve to be. So mine is stopping around there, right there. So I'm just going to measure that place. And mine is 12 inches. Divided by 2 is 6 inches, right? Then I'm going to add 1 inch seam allowance, making 7 inches. So that 7 inches, I'm going to mark it on that lower line. Then I'm just going to connect that armhole line to that hem line. And that is it. So that's your, then go ahead and cut it. But before you cut it, before you start cutting, I'm going to show you something real quick. So grab your bodice. So here's the bodice. So measure your bodice, the armhole of your bodice. So whatever you get, whatever measurement you get, should also be the same measurement of your sleeves. So it should be the same measurement. And that is it. So you can go ahead and cut it out, and you are done cutting your sleeves. And just make sure you cut 2 of the sleeves. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for coming over. Here is the end of part 1. So in part 2, we're going to join the whole thing together. So I'll see you in part 2. Have a nice one. God bless. Bye-bye.